I've got a new dish for you, which you may already have done in the class. It's a spicy Moroccan duck breast with a celeriac puree, savoy cabbage, and a confit cigar. The first thing that we're going to do is get a little spicy rub on. Now I've got a few spices in here. We've got cumin, coriander, both of which are ground, star anise, cardamom. So here's a little introduction. I'm just going to get those onions on a gentle sizzle. I think what would also be useful is if I just show you how to bone out my duck. So we're going to take the leg and the thighs off. These are what will be confit. I'm just going to keep an eye on those onions because I don't want them to catch. So that's one. So I'm going all the way around. It doesn't matter if I got a little bit of the rub in there because that's what's going to give it some flavour anyway. You'll see where the joint is and you just cut round that. And then we're going to take the breast off. You'll see there's a line that runs all the way down there. So I'm just going to cut along that, the breastbone, and take these breasts off. So there's one breast and there's the other, and those onions coming along quite nicely now. Right, so the leg and the thighs go in. I've got peppercorns. I'm not going to use all of them because there's quite a lot there. And garlic and bay leaves. And I'm just going to cover the ingredients. In this case, it's actually vegetable oil. That will do the job quite nicely, so that goes in. I reckon about an hour and a half to 2 hours on 120 degrees ought to do it. So we'll come back to that later. A little bit of rapeseed oil on the breast, just massage the fat in. And then I've got my rub here, which is going to give it that nice spicy sort of Moroccan-y flavour. You've got the cinnamon, the caraway, all the things we mentioned earlier on. Now I think what would be a nice idea is if I just lay those on the pan. I just want to get the skin nice and crispy, render that fat as well. So I'm just going to seal those on both sides. A little bit of seasoning in there as well, just salt and pepper. Right, I'm happy with those. They've nicely crisped up. Those are going in the oven. I'd say about 160 to 180 degrees. And we reckon about 20-25 minutes. The next element to the dish is going to be the savoy cabbage. We've just got a few extra ingredients. So I've put some rapeseed oil in the pan. When you throw the onions in, there's a nice little sizzle, like that. Turn it down now. You would always cook onion before garlic because the garlic is going to be smaller. The garlic goes in. I've got some celery which I've diced up and some diced carrot. So all of that can go in. Sweat those off. Throw in the savoy cabbage. Now this will dry out pretty quickly. So you can use water or any liquid you like. But I've got some white wine here. And the idea is you want the veg to be quite crispy. Right, we can forget about that and we'll dress the dish at the very end. The next part is a celeriac puree, which is very simple to do. I'm just going to dice up the celeriac. I'm not going to use all of it. I don't really need it. We're only really doing one portion. But you want the dice to be roughly the same size, the theory being that if they're all roughly the same size, then they'll all cook at the same time. So the onions go in, and we've also got a bit of thyme, so that can go in. Dice those up. In they go. I'm going to put the milk in. and then let that slowly cook down. And in about 5 minutes time, when most of the milk has reduced down, I might add a little bit more in if it needs it. The point is to get the celeriac nice and cooked so that when we blitz up, we have the puree. Right, I'm happy with that. So I'm just going to give that a good old blitz, which will take a minute or two. Right, I'm very happy with that. Could do with a pinch of salt. Give that a bit of a mix. And that's now ready to include in the dish. So we'll set that aside as well. But that's the celeriac puree done. I took it out of the oven about 10 minutes ago because I didn't really want to handle this when it was boiling hot. Now, what I quite like to do at this stage is to take the legs and just roast them off in the oven for an extra 10-15 minutes so that the skin really crisps up. But the reality is we don't need that for this part of the dish because we're going to make the cigars out of them. So I'm just going to take some of the confit off. I only need a very small amount. Well, you'll see it just falls off the bone. In fact, I'm going to take the whole lot off because I can. And then I'm just going to roughly chop. I'm actually going to take the skin off. Now, I think the skin is the best bit, but we're not going to use it in the cigar. But you can stick that back in the oven and crisp it up if you want. But here I just have the leg confit, and I'm only going to do one. And you'll remember earlier on frying off the various spices with onion, and I'm just going to add those together and give them a good old mix. But that's our sort of confit. I've got 4 sheets of phyllo pastry, and I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it this big. A little bit of egg wash on there too, like so. Then the sort of long outer edges I'm going to fold in. You'll see why in a sec. So those both go over. Then I'm only going to layer just a small amount of the duck confit in there, just to create our little cigar. And actually I'm going to take a bit off. I don't need to use all of that. Push that in and I just roll it up like so. And then that goes in the oven for about between 8 to 12 minutes. This is a jus that I made earlier on. It's a chicken stock which I've just reduced down to a thick syrup. And now we're going to put all the elements to this dish together. So the first one is the celeriac puree. So sort of dollop on there, like so. There we go. Now we've got our savoy cabbage. I'm going to do this by hand because I prefer it that way. I'm actually going to put a tiny bit of those cooking juices in that pan. I'm going to cut it into probably about 5. I'm going to put duck goes on there. That sauce is now nice and ready. Confit Cigar is also ready. Gives the dish a bit of height. And then the final bit, the jus along here. So we've got our ballantine of duck with celeriac puree, savoy cabbage and confit leg cigar. Thank you for watching.